Thank you very much, Dave. Again, I'm Jack Armstrong. I have two franchises. One is called FranNet. FranNet's been around for over 30 years. I've been with them for quite a while. FranNet works with about 200 different franchise companies. We do a lot of research into them. We talk to at least 200. We talked out of 200 franchises. We talked to at least 15 of their franchisees. We go through 3 years of financial statements. We go through the disclosure documents, and we interview the key owners. We probably turn down about half of the companies who apply. The other company I own it's also a franchise called Sunbelt Business Brokers. We list and sell existing independent businesses. I have an accounting degree, I have an MBA in finance. As I said, FranNet's been around for a while. We're basically a matchmaker. On the franchise side, we are paid by the franchisors approximately the same amount. And on the business broker side, it's like real estate. Big house, big business, big commission, small house, small business, small commission. People always ask, how do you make your money? So I tell them on the very first slide. What we're going to go today is what's going on in what looks like it's going to be a recession with a pandemic. Why are some people still looking at ownership? What are the differences today between buying an existing business versus a franchise? In existing business, you're looking to buy the owner's cash flow. What is the owner making? If the net cash flow is under $500,000, the multiple is about 3. So if you take the owner's cash flow is maybe the profit of $100,000, salary of $100,000, or maybe they're running $50,000 in expenses to the business, or the owner's taking out $250,000. If you take that times 3, it will sell for about $750,000. And you need about 30% down. If the net cash flow is between $500,000 to $1 million, the multiple is 4, and that will continue to grow all the way up to the publicly traded companies. Publicly traded Trump companies are the biggest. Today, we're dealing with the smallest ones, the opposite end of the spectrum. A franchise, no matter how well established the brand, the systems, the training, everything can be first class. But it's still a startup. You're not going to take money out for probably 6 to 9 months and sometimes a year. So one of your first decisions when you're starting to look at this is, do you want to pay more and buy an existing business but have cash flow right away? Or are you willing to look at a franchise for much less investment but have to build it for 6 to 9 months before you even think about taking money out? We're going to go over some of the myths, some of the truths out there, what's going on. We're going to take a look at the headaches and the rewards. Franchising is a regulated industry. There are 3,400 franchise companies in the United States, and they are regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. Part of the regulation is they have to give you what's called a franchise disclosure document. In that document, in section 20, is the name, address, and phone number of every franchisee who purchased. If they're out of business or if they sold, it's their home address, home phone number. If they're in business, business address, business phone number. Part of your research is talking to the good, the bad, and the ugly. What's going on out there? Why are you making money? Why does one lose everything? And we'll give you as you start to search, we'll give you the basic first steps of how you're looking. And again, it's changed a lot in the last 3 months with this pandemic and now the recession. Some of the businesses that were doing great in January and February have been closed for 3 months. Others that have been maybe more recession resistant were going along fine, and they're still going along fine. So we're talking about some of the pros and cons of these as we go through that process. We generally start, when we first talk to people about this, is why are you thinking about it now? Give us the big picture. Would your life be better if you had your own business, or you can't handle the stress? What's going on? What's happening? Why are you looking? We find there's a lot of reasons for this. Number one is control. We find that as people get closer to the age of 50, if they've been restructured a second time, there's concern that's going to happen more frequently as they get older. Second is financial security, and there are 3 parts to that. Number one is, what can I make? What can I take out of here? What can I afford to live on? Number 2 is, what can I sell this for someday? I couldn't sell my job, but I want to know if I can sell this business. And again, if we go back to the rule of three for the cash flow and give you an example. If we look at senior care, because of the aging demographics, senior care is growing very quickly. It's about 100 to 125,000 investment. The average one in their fifth year is doing $1.5 million and netting about 300,000. So if you go back to the rule of three, or 3 times 300,000, can I sell it for 900,000? Then that person who's doing the early stage research wants to talk to the people who sold in the last couple of years. What kind of price? What was the multiple? Who are the buyers? They want to know that there's an exit strategy before they get too far into their research. The third part of financial security is, do I need to be there full time? This is what we call semi-absentee. It was started about 30 years ago by the hair care industry. Gray clips, supercuts, sports clips, and the hair care franchises. The second group that got into this back in the early 2000s was the massage industry. Massage Envy, Hand and Stone, and the other ones. And then you got into the fitness with Club Pilates and kickboxing and yoga and all the ones out there. Lately, we've seen it in the beauty industry, waxing, eyebrows, etc. Semi-absentee up through February were doing very well. There were people in corporate who wanted a business on the side. Since the pandemic, these businesses are been closed. So we don't know how well they're going to come out of this. You know, if they have to do social distancing at 25 or 50% capacity, can they still make money? And that's a question that we don't know the answer to until we see them come out. Other things that people look for are flexibility and greater independence. If you take franchising and you divide it into 5 basic areas, food, retail, automotive is the old school. It's all about location, location, location. In the tri-state area, once you get into leasehold improvements, equipment, inventory, etc., you're generally looking at an investment of $250,000 and heading north. The other 2 areas are consumer service and business service. Location doesn't matter in the service industry. It's all about the demographics. Where are my customers? How do I reach them? We see the service industry, it's generally a 5-day-a-week business versus 7. The investment's generally in the $100,000 range, not $250,000. So you can get in with 5 days a week, greater flexibility at a much lower investment. So as people start to look at this, they figure out, what do I want out of a business? What's in it for me? Is a certain income, a certain risk profile, how much flexibility, what's the scalability? Can I build this up and put a good staff together? Trying to figure out what's best for me. And should I go back to my corporate job, or should I really look at becoming an entrepreneur? But figure out first what you want out of the business before you get too far into it. Right now, there's a lot of concern out there about this economy. There's recessions out there. The economics could get a lot worse. They announced the new unemployment rates on Friday. They think they'll be close to 20%. So people are concerned. And then there's the other side of, what if it bounces back and comes back quickly? What's going to do well? So I think what people are looking at is what can thrive in any kind of economy. What's going to do well if the economy goes down, but what can also do well if it bounces back quickly? And what people are really saying to me is, what's safe? What can I afford? But again, the first things we look at are demographics. What markets are being driven by demographics? The 2 fastest growing markets are the senior care and the millennials. The senior care, you look at the senior care franchises, the private duty nursing, the equipment rentals, and many more. If we look at the millennials, we can start with daycare. You have the Goddard Daycare, you have Lightbridge Academy, you have other ones. Again, if both parents are working, daycare is not an option, it's a necessity. You get into the preschool franchises, you get into the tutoring, the Huntington Learnings, the Sylvan, the Kumon, etc. And then you get into some of the SAT prep franchises. We're finding that they are more recession resistant, but they're not always pandemic resistant. Some of the education ones are closed up. They're not considered essential. Some daycare is open and some is closed. You know, franchise companies and the most people have never dealt with a pandemic before. So they're figuring this out and they have to follow the government's guidelines. But again, senior care, private duty nursing, the equipment rentals, they're all open and doing great. Education right now is a little bit slow because they're closed up. They're going to virtual, but it's not quite the same. You get into some of the blue collar franchises. We do the work for CertaPro Painting. We do it for Mr. Handyman. CertaPro right now, they're not doing indoor residential work, but they are doing outdoor residential, commercial, outdoor, and indoor. So they have about 75% of their business streams are coming in fine. Cleaning, you have two types, commercial cleaning and residential cleaning. What you're going to see in commercial cleaning, it's the buildings that are, a lot of them are closed, but they still have to be sanitized, cleaned, so they're going to be strong, even stronger going forward coming out of this. Residential cleaning is Monday to Friday, 8 to 4. And what you have there is a lot of the people are not going to the house to do any cleaning. They're not allowed to right now. But the demand will probably be greater going forward. Your basic services, people still need to get their hair cut. When they come out of the recession or the pandemic shuts down, they're going to be opening again June 22nd. But they were shut down for 3 months, but people still need to get their hair cut. Automotive, they have been open. We do that mostly in repairs, Maaco, Meineke, Amco, and some other ones that are out there. Damage restoration, also called insurance restoration. If you have a claim for your house from smoke, fire, water, mold, any of those issues, you're going to call your property and homeowner insurance agent. They're going to call ServPro, PuroClean, ServiceMaster, Paul Davis, etc., all the big ones. Those claims come in all the time, and they are still open. They are still doing about the same as before the pandemic hit. In New Jersey, there are about 300,000 businesses. About 90% are considered small, under 10 million in sales, and under 100 employees. Those businesses need help with digital marketing, IT strategies, HR, different types of training, coaching. And a lot of these businesses are still doing quite well. They switched to virtual. They're doing webinars, they're doing Zoom meetings with their clients, and they're still moving ahead. So we see them thriving in this kind of economy. Hair care and automotive are very dependent on the right location. All the others can be started out of an office or home-based. So their expenses are probably closer to the $100,000 range, where hair care is about $250,000 and automotive can be $300,000 to $350,000, depending on how big the bays are and everything else. But again, these are more affordable, that are doing reasonably well during a pandemic and a possible recession. Some of the advantages of looking at an existing business versus looking at the advantages and disadvantages of both, pros and cons. There's nothing perfect out there if you look at an existing business or a franchise. They're both pros and cons. And let me walk you through some of the advantages and some of the disadvantages. When you look at an existing business, there's cash flow. You can start to take money out of the business in the first 30 days. That's why people look at it. There is goodwill from both the suppliers and the customers. You will receive 3 years of financial statements, bank statements, and your CPA, your accountant, has the right to go through the seller's books and records until you're satisfied. So generally, you can do reasonably good financial due diligence. Reasonably attractive to lenders. Lenders like existing business because they have a cash flow, long as the books and records are in reasonably good shape. Generally, a buyer is going to put 30% down. A seller will hold a note for 30%, and the bank will lend 40%. So from the buyer's point of view, the business is paying 70% of the acquisition. From the seller's point of view, they're getting 70% of their money off the table. It's no longer at risk. From the bank's point of view, they have a 60% cushion if things head south. They can borrow from the Federal Reserve at less than 1% and lend it to you at 5 to 6%. So they have a very good markup. They have a 75% guarantee on the loan from the ESBA. So the market's established a customer base, there are employees in place. You can go in, you can visit, you can act like a customer, you can buy. How'd they treat you? Was the store busy? Is it crowded? You always need the owner to finance in an existing business. The only one that can train you and help you to take over the business, training and transition, is the old owner. And by them having a seller's note, it means they're going to be around for a while. They're not going to take all the money and disappear on you. They want to get paid. So if you call up with a question 3 months, 6 months, a year later, they have a note that they want to be paid on. And that's what's holding them in. The biggest disadvantage is the same as the biggest advantage, is cash flow. In too many small businesses, there is money off the books. Laundromats, car wash, pizza, bars, restaurants, convenience stores. You can't do due diligence on cash. If it's not there, you can't track it. No matter what the owner says, it's impossible. You're not sure if you're getting goodwill or badwill. If you're going to sell your house, your home today, you want it multiple listed. You want open houses. You want a sign in the front yard saying house for sale. If you're selling your business, you don't want anyone to find out. We're trying to sell a trucking company down at Port Newark. He doesn't want anyone to find out because his biggest supplier is Penske, and they lease a lot of their cabs from them. They don't want their credit being tightened. He's afraid his drivers will find out, and they will change jobs on him. He's afraid his customers can ship with someone else. So we have to meet with buyers and sellers before hours, after hours, at their attorney, at their accountant, at our offices. They want to keep it quiet until it gets to be a pretty firm thing before closing. You're not sure what the price should be. If you're going to buy a house, your home, or sell a home, first thing everybody does today is go online. They check Zillow, Realtor.com, and the other websites to see what are the comparables. In small business, there are no websites. There's nothing out there. You can look online, see the advertisement, but you don't know what the final selling price is. We can give you ballparks, but this is all negotiated, this business. You're not sure why the seller is selling. They might tell you it's divorce, health reasons, recession, or retirement, whatever the reason. We generally find there's other reasons out there. We work with 200 franchises with FranNet, but we also have 75 older companies where they're sold out and they ask us to help the franchisees sell. So one of the companies we've done some work with is Ace Hardware. And Ace has about 5,000 stores and they're all over the country. And generally when the seller calls, he's a gentleman in his early 70s and he says his wife wants him to retire, move to Florida, enjoy the rest of their lives together. He will say, I have the inventory in great shape, I'm still making good money, and I'm not looking for a lot. Do you think you can handle the listing? I'll say, it sounds great, would love the listing. Can I ask you just one question? Was he your friend at the mayor's office or the zoning board who told you about Lowe's or Home Depot looking at some property in the area? What's going on? What do they know that you don't? That's your true due diligence. Your accountant will help you with the financials, but there's no one that can really help you with this. They will not tell me because then I have to tell you. You're not sure about the employees. You don't know them. They don't have a non-compete. Can they go out and start a competition against you? You finance 70% of this. The old owner probably had no debt. Your margins are a little bit tighter. All your training and support comes from the owner. That's why financing is critical to make sure that transition goes very smoothly. So again, we sell a number of existing businesses, and just like a franchise, there's pros and cons. You just got to be aware of what they are as you're looking through this. In buying a franchise, same thing, pros and cons. The name recognition. Most people want that trademark. The consumer knows it. They know what's out there. It's a proven business model. If they get 50 to 100 up and running, they know what you're doing. Training, support. If you know what you're doing, great. But if you don't, how are you going to train your employees? How are you going to create that team, build that culture? You need the franchise company to come in the beginning and help train everybody. Marketing expertise, purchasing power. you're paying them a royalty, a percentage of your gross sales. You're going to be asking yourself before you ever sign the contract, what am I getting for this? And each company is different, but they should have a good answer for you. If we use an example, ServPro, it's insurance restoration. They have a national sales force calling on the 38 large insurance companies, driving business to their franchisees, sending those leads down that need repairs to their franchisees. We work with Molly Maid's franchise. His social media marketing campaign generated 300,000 quality leads for their 700 franchisees last year. It's a lot of business. Lower failure rate. If you go back to the disclosure document in section 20, after the name and address of all the franchisees, there's a section for every state is listed, and by state for the last 3 years. How many franchises were open? How many have failed or closed? How many have sold? So you want to see a minimum of 90% success. If the franchise company can't prove to you 90% track record, something's wrong. If you can't handle a 10% or less chance of failure, you're probably not an entrepreneur. Financing. Most franchise companies have lined up their bank a long time ago. We've done 5 or 6 Goddard resales in the last 3 or 4 years. And we know that TD Bank America does most of their lending. We know that if we did Supercuts, it's Bank of America. But most of the franchises lined it up. They're comfortable with that franchise. That bank's willing to lend. When you go out and visit and speak to franchisees, you're going to ask them how easy the real estate process was. Are you happy with your location? Would you pick this kind of spot again? As you start to call and visit different franchisees, you're going to feel they're pretty honest. They've paid their money. They will be brutally honest with you. You have to be fully disclosed. Someone has gone through this with you. Some of the negatives is only about 90 industries that actually franchise. 3,400 companies, but about 90 industries. It's a very structured system. Franchise companies want you to spin the wheel faster, not reinvent it. Territory restrictions or protections in the beginning help you quite a bit for the first 3 or 4 years. But as you build your business and you're starting to really grow, you can't go past your territory boundaries. You can't invade someone else's. So it could hurt your long-term growth. We sometimes work with people who look for second or third options on other territory so they can keep on growing and expanding. If you're going into the food business, you're only selling their products. You can't change the menu. But that food McDonald's has on the menu, that's what you're selling. Royalty payments are based on gross sales, and they're payable whether you're profitable or not. And again, in the first 6 to 9 months, sometimes up to a year, you're not taking much money out of here, if anything. Most of the money you make is going back into working capital, marketing dollars, etc., as you're trying to grow. Franchising is all about the distribution. They want to build the brand as quickly as possible. How do you become number one? What kind of marketing can we use to really drive the business for our franchisees? You're signing a license agreement to use their trademark and follow their systems. You're going to pay a one-time franchise fee up front between $30,000 and $40,000. You're going to pay ongoing royalties every month based on gross sales in the 5 to 6% range. There are some like McDonald's at 15% and UPS stores at 1 or 2%. But if you look at the average 90% in the middle, it's in that 5 to 6% range, most of the royalties. Franchising got started in the 18th century in Germany. They needed to move the beer. They franchised inns and taverns to sell only their type of beer. In this country, about 1880, Singer Sewing Machine in upstate New York needed to get those sewing machines off the docks in New York. They franchised dealers to sell only their sewing machines. The real growth came around 1910 to about 1960. It was the automobile. All your car dealerships are franchises, followed by most of your gasoline stations. Your repairs, your Meineke, your Maaco, your Goodyear, your STS, your AMCO, they're all franchises. Then your car rentals, your Budget, your Avis, your Hertz, your Enterprise are all franchises at one time. So the automobile industry grew up very dependent on franchising to sell and service, and franchising grew up very dependent on the automobile to manufacture. After World War II in the early 1950s, Ray Kroc got involved with McDonald's. And Ray Kroc is very well known for McDonald's, but he should be better known as the father of modern-day franchising. When Ray Kroc got involved with McDonald's, he studied every little thing about it. When do you clean a grease trap? How do you slice a tomato? What's a good location, morning side or afternoon side drive time? How do you hire 50 teenagers? When do you fire some? How big is the parking lot? What's the layout? And he documented everything at McDonald's University out in Illinois. But Ray Kroc said, I don't want any industry experience. Prior to Ray Kroc, the food, the hotel, and the automotive, you had to have industry experience before they'd sell you the franchise. Ray Kroc said, no, I want you to follow my process, my systems. He went after returning veterans from World War II, Korea, and corporate America. He wanted people who are used to a process and following a system. And Ray Kroc didn't want any experience. He didn't want you bringing bad habits into his system. He grew faster than anybody else. It took off and he exploded. He just did fabulous. He's still the biggest out there today. In the 1960s, 1967, Minnie Pearl was a famous actress on TV. And she licensed her name in 1967 to a group of promoters who were going to build Minnie Pearl's Fried Chicken. And these people went around the country 1967, 68, 69, into early 1970, selling Minnie Pearl's Fried Chicken. At the same time, down in Kentucky, you had a gentleman named Colonel Sanders, who was driving around the South in a station wagon, selling Kentucky Fried Chicken franchises out of the back of a station wagon. By 1970, this was going to be the Burger King McDonald's battle of chicken between Minnie Pearl and Colonel Sanders. Except the promoters or the backers of Minnie Pearl collected all the money, packed their bags, and moved to an island in the South Pacific and never heard from again. 168 of those people tried to open and every one of them failed. So in 1971, California passed the first laws regulating the sale of a franchise. It was followed by 13 other states in the 1970s. So in 1979, the United States Congress put all of franchise regulations under the Federal Trade Commission. Today, the franchise industry is regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. It's a regulated industry and what they can do and how they do it. A few years ago, I was reading Warren Buffett's last autobiography called Snowball. And towards the second half of the book, he had a chapter on franchising. And I was reading it and I saw this information there, so I took it and put it into a slide. So I have to give Warren Buffett credit. It's kind of his information that I just kind of borrowed from my presentation. I thought it would fit in here. As you're starting to do your due diligence and you found some companies you like, some franchise companies, you're going to receive from the franchise company their franchise disclosure document known as the FDD. And in this is the information you're going to be using for your phase 1 research, your start of your research. Sections 1 through 4 are about the people that you're going to be speaking with. The first part of it is how have they grown by organic acquisition? Who's the competition? Where do they stand in the industry? Number 2 are the resumes of the key owners, key directors, key employees. What's their track record? What have they done before? Number 3 is litigation. Are any franchisees suing the company? Is the company suing any franchisees? And there's 10 years of history behind the litigation. Has anyone involved with the business ever been involved in a personal or a corporate bankruptcy? So 1 through 4 are all about the integrity of the people, their track record, can you work with them? 5, 6, and 7, it's all about the investment and where does the money go? When I said to you before, senior care is approximately 100 to 125,000, generally most people say, well, where does that money go? Who gets that? Now you're going to see and hear how much for marketing, how much for working capital. How long does that working capital take me? 3 months, 6 months, 9 months? How much is the franchise fee? How much for computers, software, training, etc.? So when they say our investment is approximately $100,000 or $200,000, in sections 5, 6, and 7, it breaks down where that money is going to be going to. In the contract, you're going to find out in section 9, what are your obligations under the contract? In section 11, what is the company's obligations towards you? In section 12, you're going to know the territory. What are the demographics? How does it look? How big is it? What do they base that territory on? In section 20, again, is the name, address, and phone number of every franchisee, the current ones and those who have left the system either by sale or by closure. You're going to have a list of all the people who left in the last beginning, but you're going to have the last phone number they last gave with the company. So as you start to dig into this and you're talking to current franchisees, the conversation is going to be a lot different with the pandemic and a recession looming than it was just 3 months ago. Going to be more questions. Are you open? Are you surviving? How are your sales compared to a year ago? What's the changes? How do you plan to rebuild back up again? The conversation has changed with the pandemic and a recession at the same time. These companies have gone through recessions. They have gone through the dot-com bust. They have gone through the Great Recession of 08, 09, 10. They've survived that. They have the track records. You're starting now to look at their financial statements. How strong is their balance sheet? What's their P&L look like? Can they get through this section? Are they going to be a good partner for me? What are they claiming the earnings claim is? What did the franchisees make a year ago? What are they showing for the first quarter this year or the second quarter? As you start to do your due diligence, what's changing because of the pandemic and the recession? You're going to look at their manager policy. Can I start to build something? Can I hire people? Can I do a second or a third territory? I don't want to buy a job. I want to make sure I can build something that long-term is not dependent on me. You get into some of the technical legal details. Can I renew this contract? Can I terminate it for whatever reason? Can I sell it or transfer it to someone else? So the disclosure document is your first step in due diligence. As you get this document and you start to go through it, you're going to come up with a number of questions that you're speaking to the franchise company about. And the better franchise companies will be screening you as much as you're screening them. So you're going back and forth maybe for a few weeks. As you go through these questions, you eventually start to get a good feel for it. And the franchise company will suggest to you it's time to talk to our franchisees. As you talk to the first 3 or 4, see if you can invite yourself to go spend some time with that franchisee. When you get into a place of business, watch what the owner does. What's their function? What are they doing? What's their day like? Can you see yourself doing that? I wouldn't worry about the money right away. I'd worry about, do you think you can do it and will you enjoy it? Take a look at the business from the ground up. Can I see myself doing this? Something I never thought of, but it looks pretty interesting. I'm going to get into the myths going forward here. Most people that come to see us want to talk about fast food and retail. That's what their whole concern is. What's out there? They see the signs all over the place. Again, there's 31 to 3,400 companies, 90 industries, about 900,000 units open. But most of the growth, again, is the service industry. For the last 10, 15 years, it's all about service. It's not retail, food, or automotive anymore. People think they succeed because of the quality of the product. I have people come in and say, this ice cream is the best I ever had. I want to buy the franchise. Oh, that Mexican food, I've never had anything better. I want to buy this company. I am sure that if we all got together, we can probably figure out how to make a hamburger that tastes better than McDonald's. So if my product's going to be better than the largest in the world, why shouldn't we go with that? Because you're buying a system, a process. How do they drive sales? How do they market to get that? Operations, you have 50 teenagers you're hired. How do you handle that? The accounting, the average Burger King owner in this country owns 42 units. The average chef in this country owns one. It's all about systems, process. How do we handle this? How do we set it up? How fast can we shift if we have a pandemic, if we have a recession? How do we do the product mix differently? You're looking to the franchise company who's been through this before. How do they help you get through it the next time? Successful franchisees emerge in this, no new competition. If I go to a party on a Saturday night, we're chatting with people, making small talk, meeting people for the first time. They say, hey, Jack, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm a franchise broker. I represent about 200 franchises. You go, wow, that's great. What's the hot one? Where should I invest my money? There is nothing hot in franchising. Franchising steals from independence. If you lived in North Jersey, 195 North in New Jersey, 30 years ago, every small town had their own bakery. How many are left today? Dunkin' Donuts did not make a better donut, but they did market better than anyone else. If we look at Great Clips 35 years ago was 0 stores. Today they're the number one brand in the country with almost 6,000 units. They're like a 97% success rate. So again, as you start to look at this, how do they take market share from independents? What's their demographic growth? Why are they better than anyone else? That's your basic due diligence you're going to be doing here and asking those questions. Again, you're adding the other questions now to it, other than the normal ones. How are you dealing with the pandemic? You've been closed, Great Clips, for 3 months in New Jersey. Supercuts, Sports Clips, you've all been closed for 3 months. How do you plan to come out of this? You should start to take a look at that. People think they're expensive. About 3,400 companies, under 50,000 is 13%, from 50 to 100 is 17, or 30% of the 3,400, or roughly 1,000 franchise companies are under 100,000 investment, where you need 30,000 down. That's a wide selection in that service economy. The bottom 3 is food, hotel, automotive, and retail. That's about 70%. Generally, when you go to finance, you're going to need 25 to 30% out of your pocket. And financing for the better franchise is relatively easy. You can do 70 to 75%. And that will include a certain amount for working capital until you get to break even. As we work with people and they need this 100 to 125,000, some will have it in their savings. They've been saving up for this day. It's something they always thought about doing, is having their own business. They might be going with a friend or maybe a partner. They might be using partially home equity. Financial institutions or bank lending is generally 70, 75%. They will finance for most franchises. If it's a resale, remember the seller will help with holding a note. The other way that we see growing quite a bit is using the 401k or the IRA. A lot of people coming out of corporate America right now saying, "Hey, Jack, I have a lot of money in my 401k, not as much in my regular savings. How can I use a small part of this to help get me my new start?" And you have to be careful. I won't get too technical with you, and I can always send you a company companies that specialize in this. I don't, but I know the basic process. You would set up a C corporation. Your C corporation sets up a 401k. And let's, for example, say you worked at Merck, and Merck had their 401k at Fidelity. Well, your new employer, your company, is going to set up their 401k at Fidelity as well. You don't sell the investments while they're in Fidelity at Merck. You transfer them to your new 401k. Once they're in there, your 401k might sell $30,000 of Merck stock and buy $30,000 worth of stock in your new company. That capital injection into your new company, the banks look at that and they will lend then the 70% you need, or the 70,000. If it's 200,000, you're putting 60 in, you're borrowing 120 at that point, 180, I'm sorry. No, 61, 20. So again, you're not touching your money. You're using part of the 401k, but your savings and your home equity is safe. I hear this a lot. What if I invest some more money? Can I get a higher return? There's no correlation between the investment and the franchise. What you're seeing here, let me use an example that would be better. If we looked at senior care, it's about $100,000 investment. Again, the 5th year, you're doing about $1.5 million, making $300,000. And you're asking yourself, well, 3 times that, can I sell it for $900,000? Then they want to go to the disclosure document and talk to the people who sold recently. Early stage research, they're doing this. You compare that to a McDonald's, where it's $1 million investment, and in the same 5th year, you're still making the same $300,000. Still 30% on your money, but you got to put 10 times the amount at risk versus senior care. What if you want to do a second territory? Well, senior care might be another $50,000, working capital and some marketing dollars, more franchise fee. McDonald's, you got to build another one. It's the second one. So now you got $2 million in to make $600,000 versus $150,000 to make $600,000. Service businesses require far less capital investments, and that's why they yield higher returns. What you're finding is they're not investing in fixtures, leasehold equipment, inventory, all kinds of stuff. It's just, you can start home-based or a small office. Your laptop, your cell phone is generally what you need in most service-based businesses. Experience is required. I think Ray Kroc shattered this myth. Most want communication skills, management skills. Biggest challenge today is how you're going to manage 30, 40 people if you've never managed that many before. Are you managing skilled or unskilled workers? What are you trying to accomplish here? Again, there's about 900,000 units open, about 21 million jobs, 2.3 trillion in sales, about 660 billion in payrolls, about 3,100 companies, and about 90 industries. You can say 31 to 3,400 companies. That's the state of franchising today. As you start to look at this, before we work with people, we ask them to take an assessment. And we've been using it for 20 years, this assessment. And you get into some basic questions. The first one is, when you get out of bed in the morning, where do you want to go? Home-based, retail, office, warehouse, downtown? What's the kind of environment you want to see yourself in? Second is, what kind of employees do you want? Skilled, unskilled, blue collar? No employees? Third might be income. How soon do you take money out? How much? What do you want to be in 5 years? What's your break-even number? What do you have to keep living the way you are? You then get into the management style, the company, the franchise company. You want someone that's really strict. Everything's by the book, or they're more flexible. Food and children's education is very strict. Service-based digital marketing is very flexible. So again, what's that quality you want? How many days do you want to work? Food, retail, and auto is generally 7 days a week. Service-based businesses are Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So as you start to look at this, you're going to realize that the older, well-established brand names are very structured, and they're a lot more money. They're very expensive, and they have garbage for territory. The better territory is picked over 20 years ago, and what's left today, they didn't want. If we go with a newer company, a lot less money, much more flexibility. You can build as big as you want. You can scale it. But there's certainly a much higher risk with that newness. There's no correlation between the cost and the return. There is a correlation on that risk factor. People are buying franchises because of the track record, their experience. If they have 100 open and running well, and you're number 101, they have most of that worked out already, versus you trying to do it yourself for the first time. They're keeping it as simple as possible. They're breaking this down and training different people on this system to be profitable. Training and support is critical for you if you've never done it before, but if you've never done it before, you're not going to be able to train your help, your staff. You need them to come in and really train your people. Name recognition might be within the industry, not to the general public. If we look at PuroClean or ServPro and for insurance restoration, I know that most of the homeowner and property insurance agents know who those companies are. They're using them for their clients. You're looking at their sales, their marketing channels. Are they repeatable? Can I count on these? Can I take them in my territory? So you're always in business for yourself and not by yourself. You have other franchisees that will help you, as well as the corporate headquarters. So you're trying to focus on what's in it for you. What's that fit? What's the ideal business for you? And you're starting to look at what kind of income you need, what kind of investment, the quality of life, type of employees, their structure. Here's all the things I want to see. Now, here's what I'm looking at. Is it better to go back to corporate and get another job to do it? Or is it better to become entrepreneurial and take a look? So audit's the vehicle to get what you want, what your goals are. And all the franchise does is reduce risks. They've done it 200 times before, and you're number 201. They got it worked out. And again, what's your function of the business? As you're talking to franchisees and you're going out and visiting some, you're asking them, what's your day like? What's the most important thing? What are you working on? As you're watching them in the office, what are they focused on? Can you see yourself doing that? For example, a great chef will never buy a McDonald's. They can't change the menu. Again, you're looking out, how far do we want to look at? 5, 10, 20 years? Is the resale important? Are we creating a legacy for our children? What do we want to do with this business? We've created an asset. What's the long-term strategy? Again, what do you want from the business? Challenge, recognition, prestige is they want to be part of the local business community. They want to be active in the Chamber of Commerce, Rotary, and different ones. They want to be active in the small business community. They want to give back. They want to make sure they can build equity. They want to sell it someday. They want to make sure it's part of their retirement strategy. Want more time for family and their hobbies. They haven't had hobbies in a while, maybe because they're so busy working. They want their independence and control back. And again, they all want financial security. And that takes different ways. Let me go over some of the basic ones there. Most people don't want to lose money. They want to keep their investment as low as possible. They want a great return, really high. Can I finance this? Can I keep more money in the bank instead of giving it to the franchise company? I only want to work 5 days a week. What do the demographics look for my area? Is this a good fit for this franchise company? Do we have the demographic that they're looking for? Are they really a well-run company? You take hair care, it's a very competitive industry. And Great Clips has got 5,000 to 6,000 units. Supercuts has got over 3,000. Sports Clips got a couple thousand. They all took market share away from independents. Why are they doing that? What's working? What's not working? You want to know that information before you ever sign. Is this a proven, scalable model? I don't want to buy a job. I want to make sure this is the right one I want to do. What's their strategy? Am I in alignment with that? Do I understand the strategy? Long-term, do we have some stability? And you're going to add to this as you go forward. You might say, I don't want it outsourced to Asia. I don't want technology to replace me. I'm just doing 101 today. But as you get into this, you can have a lot more things you come up with that you want to see from the business. What's important to you? And again, they're coming to you. They're screening you as much as you're screening them. What are the sales? What are the management? What's customer service? You know, if you can't make a sales call in a pandemic, how do you survive? What else are they doing? Is it a marketing channel? Do you go to digital marketing to get it? What skills do you have? What can be transferred over? And again, it's all changed in the last 90 days with this pandemic and now a recession because of it. And again, you're looking at your model. What kind of employees do you want? Skilled, unskilled, blue collar, white collar? What is your cash investment? Are you comfortable borrowing on top of that? What's the environment you see yourself? Home-based, office, retail? Are we doing this semi-absentee or full-time? How big? How many units do we want? What kind of customers? Business owners or the general public? Are we comfortable with the service or do we need a product? Are we comfortable looking at newer ones or we want to focus on well-established, safer ones? How big do I want? You can have a million other items. I'm just doing 101 today, the real basics. As we work with people, and we have them, they take this assessment, it's a 12-page report, we get it back, and we build what's called a business model. What are the objectives? What are the goals? And as people come in and we meet with them, we're trying to come up with at least 4 suggestions to start with. What franchisors are a fit? We'd like to look at them in different industries. What's important to them? What's the most important part? And as you begin your due diligence and your discovering process, you're going to find things you don't like about those companies. As you track it, you say, I didn't like these 3 things. we then say, how about we look at this? It doesn't have what you don't like. That's more of what you like. As we find out, let's keep fine tuning this process. Eventually, in about 45 to 60 days, you get to a yes or no. About 70% of the people drop out now. About 30% go forward. In the next phase, you haven't signed anything yet, but you are hiring the franchise attorney. You are hiring the accounting firm. You are getting your bank loan pre-approved. So if you want to move forward, everything is ready. You get professional help to do it. So the first phase, business model to yes or no, no cost, no obligation, you're looking. Second phase, yes, no, to launch, you're going to put about $2,500 out into professional fees. The accountant, the CPA, probably a bank application to get everything wrapped up tight. Again, walking you through the research. You're going to talk to the franchisor. You're going to receive their franchise disclosure document and start to read and review that. Once you're done with that, you start to validate with franchisees. You're going to call and visit a number of them. If that goes well, what we encourage people is to get on a plane, or right now do a virtual discovery day and meet everybody. Marketing, operations, training, the CEO, what's their vision as you're going through it. If those 3 steps are good, then you're going to go to the next one. This is when you put the team together. You're going to work with your franchise attorney, your CPA firm. You're going to work with SCORE to help put your business plan together, make sure your financing in place. You're going to work with the bank. You put your team together right now to say, before I sign, I want to make sure I'm aligning everything. You're going to take a step back and ask yourself some questions. Do I fit this business? Let's have the attributes and characteristics I am looking for that would excite me. Can I hit my goals? Am I comfortable with their systems and processes? Am I sure I can afford this? Am I comfortable with this risk? There's some risk here. Will I have fun? Will I enjoy my business? Can I see myself doing this for a long time? Can I really grow the business? What's their strategic advantage? Why them and not the competition? Is it stable? Is it more of a fad? Can it meet all my goals, personal and financial? Is my family on board? I don't want to settle for something that does not fit my model. I want to find something that just fits me as best as I can ever thought of. That's what I'm looking for. This is my quick advertisement. We see people by appointment. It used to be in Metuchen. Right now we're doing Zoom and Google Hangouts, usually Zoom, to keep up with what's going on right now. We ask you to complete the assessment, the profile. We send you a copy of that. We use that to help establish what your goals are, objectives. Then we meet and try and match up with companies and say, based on what we're seeing and hearing, based on the last 1,000 people we placed, and here's what they did, the people with the same background, same personality fits, found success in these businesses. Here's ones we think you should look at. Here's my information, my contact. If you want a copy of this, you can email me at any time or call me and I will get you out a copy. If you want to connect on LinkedIn, that's down below too. So I thank you, and I'm going to turn it back over to Dave for this last part of it. And Dave, it's all yours, sir. I don't know if you're on mute or if you can hear me, but hopefully
Yes.
you can.
Thank you, Jack. We appreciate your candor with this business. You've always been very informative in the last several years I've known you. I've been doing this for 6, and we've been together several times, and
Thank
you've
you.
always been a straight shooter. And all our attendees can be very confident that he would lead you in the proper way. This is the resources for COVID our SCORE website at score.org, coronavirus, and mentoring requests. If you'd like to meet with a mentor to go over a little bit of what you learned today from a mentor, would be at our website, centraljersey.score.org. We thank you all for attending.
You want to take any questions, Dave?
Yeah, would anybody have any? I opened the chat box and the Q&A. There are nothing in any of those. So if anybody would like to unmute right at this time and ask Jack a question, we'll be here for as long as we need to be. Thank you for attending. looks like we may have lost attendees. They may be going off, Jack. Don't see any.
There's
I
one.
have a question of Jack's fees. What do you charge, Jack? I think that's clear that the fees are paid by the franchise company. Jack, are you still there? To whoever put that in, Jack's fees, I believe the franchise companies pay Jack's means of making a living there, and no cost to the potential buyer of a franchise.
Okay, I think we're good, Dave.
Okay, Jane, I can't tell who else is on. I don't see anybody else on, just you and I.
I believe so. Harvey Levine is on. Hi, Harvey.
How you doing, Harvey?
I think that's it. So I'm going to end the meeting. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We'll get, I'll have another webinar we need to set up. So when we have that one ready, I'll get in touch and just walk you through setting that up.
That's a deal.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Jack did a good job.
Oh, yeah, he always does, yeah. Yep.
I haven't been to his before, but
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, Jane.
thanks. Have a good one. Bye.
See ya.